So, let's talk about the upcoming service trip. What if I told you that a single event happening 1,000 miles away could completely and suddenly change everything for us on the ground? In this analysis, we're going to take a really honest look at the new risks facing our spring 2026 trip to Costa Rica, and then lay out the critical questions we absolutely have to answer to ensure the safety of our team.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll talk about a framework for safety, just so we're all on the same page. Then we'll look at a major event that really transformed the entire region. After that, we'll dig into a couple of case studies of how systems can fail, and then we'll audit our current plan against that backdrop. And finally, all of this will lead us to two very critical questions that need clear answers.
To get started, before we can really talk about the specific risks, we need a shared way to understand how things can go wrong in the first place. And I want to be clear, this isn't about pointing fingers or placing blame. It's about building a stronger, more resilient plan for everyone involved. I want you to think of our safety plan like a big stack of Swiss cheese, you know? Each slice, whether it's our experienced staff, our local relationships, our insurance policy, each one is a layer of protection. But here's the thing. Every layer has weaknesses, right? Holes. A disaster only happens when, by some chance, all those holes in all those different slices line up perfectly. Our job, our responsibility, is to make sure they never do.
Okay, so why is this analysis so critical right now? Because on January 3rd of this year, the entire operational environment for international travel in Central and South America was fundamentally, and I believe permanently, altered. The game has changed. Early that morning, a military operation kicked off in Venezuela. Now, that's 1,000 miles from Costa Rica. You'd think it wouldn't affect us. But the ripple effect was immediate and it was profound. The FAA shut down a massive part of the airspace, and that single decision triggered an unprecedented regional disruption that cascaded for days. The impact was just staggering. In a single day, over 400 flights were canceled out of just one airport, San Juan, Puerto Rico. That's 60% of its entire schedule, just gone. To put that into perspective, that's like shutting down a major interstate highway during rush hour. The entire system just grinds to a halt.
And this wasn't just some minor inconvenience. We're talking about over 50,000 people stranded across more than 20 countries. It was a really stark demonstration of just how interconnected and frankly how fragile our regional travel networks have become. One event can paralyze an entire region. Now take a look at this map. This is the current U.S. State Department travel advisory. The different colors show you the different levels of risk. You've got blue, yellow, orange. As you can see, the region we are planning to travel to is a complete patchwork of different threat levels. This is just not the same stable environment we've operated in for the past 8 years. It's a new reality. So, the big question is, how do these new risks relate to our own plan? Well, to understand that, I think it's helpful to look at two real-world examples of how well-intentioned teams and what seemed like robust systems can still catastrophically fail. So in 1978, United Flight 173 crashed. Why? Because the captain got so fixated on a minor landing gear light that the entire crew just lost the big picture, and they ran out of fuel. In a totally different case, a trapeze artist fell because the team used a cheap decorative hook that was never rated for human weight. So you have a failure of focus and a failure of technical discipline. Both of them were absolutely fatal. And here's the crucial point about Flight 173. The information needed to save that plane existed in the cockpit. The junior crew members knew about the fuel state, but the culture on that plane prevented them from effectively challenging the captain. The system for communicating a critical truth completely broke down. This brings us to something called the normalization of deviance. Think of it like a tiny, leaky faucet. At first, it's just a small drip you can ignore, but over time, it causes serious damage. In our world, it could be something that seems minor, like not doing a proper head count before the bus leaves. It feels harmless in the moment, but it's a crack in our procedures that slowly becomes the new, lower standard. Okay, so with this whole context of risk models and system failures in our minds, let's apply that Swiss cheese model directly to the current plan for the service trip to Costa Rica. First off, let's be fair and acknowledge the existing layers of defense, our slices of cheese. The plan is built on a really solid foundation. We have 8 years of history, deep local partnerships, an experienced team, and a focus on historically safe rural areas. These are significant strengths, no question about it. So what are the new holes in our cheese?
Well, we have the very real threat of another January 3rd style event closing the airspace. We have hard data showing rising violence and political volatility inside Costa Rica. And we have our own history of normalizing deviance, like that time we picked up hitchhikers and put them on a student bus. Each one of these is a whole that could tragically line up with another. This entire analysis, the models, the case studies, the new risks, it all boils down to two very specific, very technical questions. And the answers to these questions will tell us whether our defenses, our layers of cheese, are actually robust enough for the world we're living in, right now, in 2026. First, do we have a formal, written emergency extraction and repatriation protocol? And I don't mean a vague understanding of what we do. I mean a documented plan that details exactly who is in charge on the ground and who is in charge at home if a crisis hits. Does it cover scenarios like the airspace suddenly closing or civil unrest? And second, do we have the right insurance? A standard policy might not cover us if we're detained by a government or caught in a natural disaster. That's why we need a very special penned rider. It stands for Political Extraction and Natural Disaster. It's an extra layer of protection that, as of this year, is required for all trips going to this region. Look, at the end of the day, this is about more than just a trip. It's about our commitment to the safety and the well-being of every single person on our team. It's about our integrity as an organization. We can't predict the future, of course not, but we are called to be wise stewards and to prepare for it. And really, that's what this is all about.